The flowers on the altar in today's bulletin are sponsored in loving memory of her dad, Kenny Milton, in remembrance of his birthday on June 22nd. And I'm going to be on vacation starting on Thursday of this week, and I'll be back in the office after the 4th of July, preaching the first Sunday of July. Reverend Richard Pearson, who's a member of our congregation, is going to be preaching next Sunday. We do have a number of things going on. You can see listed in the bulletin. And tomorrow night, Christian education meets here at church at 6 o'clock. Also, we have 6 or 6:30. The outreach committee is meeting, and there's going to be theology on tap at Pride Bar on Tuesday night at 6:30, and everybody is welcome to come. There are different things in here. There's a mission trip to Augsburg, Kentucky in September. Information on that is available. The youth are raising funds for their trip to southern Kentucky, and they are selling gift certificates to Krispy Kreme donuts. So if you're a person who likes Krispy Kreme donuts, which generally means you're a person who breathes, you can get them for a decent price. Catherine Olemacher has an announcement.
Good morning. I just want to say I love my St. Mark's family of faith. In the midst of all the rain and all the horrible weather we had last week, we had one day that was beautiful, and that was Friday, and that was the day of our first annual St. Mark's Golf Scramble. And we had a very good turnout, and we had a lot of people that I hope had a good time. And this was a fundraiser for all of the things that St. Mark's does, and to support the missions and from the unified budget. And I want to say that we made $3,973.77. Plus, the youth did a 50-50 drawing, and they made $76 for their mission fund. So total, we made over $4,000 from our golf scramble. And it's the first annual. We'd like to do this again next year. If you have feedback, please let me know. But I want to thank everybody who played, who participated, who donated, who sponsored holes, and who volunteered, because without everybody here, this could not have happened. But it was a success, and I think God smiled on us Friday, and God knows that we're doing good work here. Thank you.
Catherine asked for feedback, and I'm going to give some feedback. The reason for the success was Catherine. Catherine did a tremendous amount of work. I cannot say enough thank yous to Catherine for the great job you did, so thank you. Let us center ourselves and prepare ourselves for worship with music for settling down. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city, it shall not be moved. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. Let us rise and sing our opening hymn, number 566, Be Still, My Soul. of the still small voice. Quiet our inner spirit. Help us to focus upon you and you alone, to hear your voice within. There are so many other voices demanding our attention. We cannot attend to them without you. Be still and know that I am God. You say to us, as you said to Elijah, may your voice speak through us. In weakness, be our strength. In poverty, be our love. In depression, be our joy. In apathy, be our love. We cannot sing love song, O Lord, unless it be your voice singing in us. Take this heart, and with this mouth, make your praise and thanksgiving reality here and now. Because of, and in the name of our Messiah, Jesus Christ. Amen. I invite everyone to share God's peace.
If the young people will come forward, please, and those young at heart stay seated, but attentive to the message. How are we doing this morning? Good. Right. I'm going to play a few little sounds, and you tell me if you know what they are, okay? Here's the first one. What is that? Ocean, maybe? Yeah, what else? The sea? A fan, the wind blowing? Okay. How about this one? Let's give it a little more time. Somewhat. What else other than a tornado? What happens when the earth starts to shake this way? Earthquake, right. Okay, here's another one. Now this might put somebody to sleep. Oh wait, it's a commercial. Oh, okay, there we go. What's that?
Fire.
Fire. That's an easy one, wasn't it? How many like to listen to a fire? No? So, lastly, here's the last little piece I'm going to play, okay? And this you can hear even in New Albany. You can hear it in the big cities and small towns. So what is all of this? Cars, traffic, that's right. That's a lot of noise, isn't it? hear noise all day long, don't you? How many of y'all had a television on this morning when you woke up? A radio? Anything? Just your parents telling you to get ready for church? That's a lot of noise too. You were in bed. You slept in until something ago? Almost an hour? Well, we are surrounded with noise all the time. And sometimes it can be very distracting. And in the Bible lesson this morning, we'll hear of Elijah listening for God's voice in the wind and in the earthquake and in the fire. He didn't hear it. But I want you to do something for me real quick. Just for a second, let's just hold our breath and not make a noise. What was that? You can breathe. What did you hear? You heard silence, didn't you? It was quiet. Sometimes you heard what? The fans, the air conditioning. So there are times that we need to take a moment just to be quiet and listen for God's voice in our life. So this week, when you get all busy, try to find a moment that you can just sit and be still and listen to the silence. And maybe you'll hear God's voice. Can we do that? All right. Let's pray before we go to church. God, we thank you for loving each of us and for the moments of quiet so we can hear your voice. Amen. Quietly walk back to the back of the sanctuary for junior church. Our scripture text this morning comes from 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 through 4, and 8 through 15a. Listen for the word of God. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of one of thee by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid. He got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. He left his servant there. But he himself went for a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. "It is enough now, O Lord. Take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lied down under the broom tree and fell asleep. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Get up and eat." He looked, and there at his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat. Otherwise the journey will be too much for you." He got up, and he ate, and he drank. Then he went in on the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to air up the mount of God. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." Then the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus." The reading of God's word this morning. Thanks be to God. And now our morning reflection by the Reverend Dr. John Himself.
Let us pray. Let us, O God, this day learn to be still and hear and feel your presence. Amen. My favorite non-divine character in the Bible is the prophet Elijah. And he was the greatest of all the prophets of Israel. Elijah the Tishbite, who came, we think, from a village named Tishba. And we know nothing of his background. He just shows up one day as a prophet and confronts an evil King Ahab and his wife, Queen Jezebel. They're leading the kingdom away from the God of Israel and toward pagan gods. And God sends Elijah, the greatest of all God's prophets, to bring the people back to God. And in a dramatic moment, before this passage is read, Elijah does something, well, very unique and very dramatic. If you recall Jesus being tempted in the desert, the devil takes Jesus to the top of a high parapet and says, "Fall down," to test God. And Jesus says to the devil, "Do not put your Lord, your God, to the test." Jesus was right. And Jesus never performed miracles like party tricks to prove anything about God. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. Words to live by. And yet, previous to what we read today, Elijah does just that. He has something of a theological duel with pagan prophets. And Elijah, to win this duel, puts the Lord his God to the test. And Elijah asked that God strike down fire upon 2 oxen that Elijah so helpfully had just doused with water to make it an even bigger challenge. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. And Elijah, the greatest prophet in all of Israel, put God to the test. And God complied with Elijah. God listened to the prophet and did what Elijah asked. And he sent down and burned up the 2 oxen. Elijah won this great theological duel and then began to kill the priests and prophets of the pagans. The king and queen, needless to say, were rather angry with Elijah and very upset. This could not go unanswered. And they wanted Elijah's head on a silver platter. They literally wanted his head on a platter. So they sent the army out. Bandits were out. Common citizens were out. There's a reward on his head, so that Elijah and his head could be separated from his shoulders and served on a silver platter to the king and queen. And Elijah, the greatest prophet in all of Israel, did exactly what you would expect him to do. He ran away really fast. And he wanted to die. But God kept providing Elijah with food and water cave, waiting to hear from God. And here we see Elijah's internal struggle. His fears, his doubts, his private withdrawal into the wilderness, his fleeing. But the words are not just about the prophet. It's also about, his words are also about God, who responds to Elijah and meets the particular needs of the situation, and then ultimately redirects him. God has this conundrum. Now, I was thinking of that. I don't think I've ever said the words, God has this conundrum, in a sermon before. We don't generally think of God having a conundrum. But God does have this conundrum. Elijah is the greatest prophet in all of Israel. On Mount Carmel, he showed that he, and he alone, was the last of God's people. He was the last person on earth obedient to the God of Israel. And Elijah was pretty much saying that Judaism was dead, except in him, the last of God's people. And Elijah said those same words before God. And God did not rebuke him for that because Elijah happened to be right. And Elijah was broken. He found himself alone in almost every possible way. His words were not an exaggeration. The kingdom truly had leaned towards paganism. They trusted their king over God. They trusted their queen over God. And Elijah stood alone, and he was afraid. And here's the conundrum. Elijah, in sharing about God, had done something wrong. He had put God to the test. And then he killed in the name of God. This displeased God. But God was also hurting for Elijah. God's heart was broken for Elijah as well. So God does a couple things in response. The first thing that God does is God comforts the prophet. Elijah, who is totally faithful to God, is loathed by everyone else. He is gripped with fear. He is depressed. He is lonely. Elijah, this faithful prophet, was the least loved person in all the kingdom. And God comforts Elijah because God knows something about faithful people. Faithful people are often not always the most popular people in town. And the lack of popularity does not demonstrate a lack of faithfulness to God. You ever notice that sometimes being faithful to God doesn't always, is uncomfortable? It makes us stand out. It makes us seem like the odd people out. Interesting thing, a friend of mine and I were doing some research on churches, and the Barnett Institute did a study about religious trends. And the mean average church attendance in congregations across the United States is 75 people. To give you a point of reference, the average attendance for United Church of Christ congregations in our association was 63 last year. Last year, that included our church, which average attendance last year was 170 something, and a church in Louisville had an average attendance of 10. So that gives you a point of reference. And in recent years, mainline Protestant churches have declined in attendance. Roman Catholic churches have declined in attendance. And while we look at the landscape and say, what about the mega churches? There are a lot of places where mega churches don't exist. And they don't have nearly as much impact on society as smaller churches do. To get to my bigger point, the churches doing the vast majority of mission work in communities is being done by churches such as ours. I was told not long ago by somebody who has been working his entire career in social services for downtown New Albany, said that all the social services in this community rest on 4 legs. He said it's the Housing Authority, Hope Southern Indiana, St. Vincent de Paul, and St. Mark's. And I was told that if one of those legs collapsed, the whole thing would collapse. I was thinking, but we're not the biggest church in town. I know we're not the most popular church in town. And I'm not even going to say we're the most faithful church in town. But we do try hard. Sometimes, like Elijah, we find ourselves wondering, are we alone? Who else is out there? And so God reminds Elijah that being faithful is not always about being the most popular. And God lifts Elijah up. But then God confronts Elijah in a most unique and even unusual way. As Elijah is sitting in the cave, there's a lot of noise, storms and bangs and booms. And then silence. And in the silence, Elijah hears the voice of God speaking to him. It's not in the earthquakes, or the thunder, or on the tops of mountains with fire, or in murdering one's adversaries. God is present to Elijah like God was present to Moses. So gentle a fire that the fire does not consume the bush. God is present in the still, small voice. And very quietly, Elijah understands. He's comforted, he's challenged, and in one fell swoop, he becomes still aware of God's presence. And Elijah is told to get up and move forward and find his successor. Which, so you know how the story keeps going, he does. And ultimately, with the work of his successor, the kingdom is overthrown and God comes back into being the God of all people. But it all comes because Elijah was a faithful prophet. A faithful prophet who took time to be still and listen to the voice of God. We too are challenged to take time to be still. Turn off the music, the radio, the television. Turn off the phones. To find a quiet place and listen. God speaks to us. God does comfort us. God does challenge us. And sometimes we can actually hear God if we take the time to be still and listen. Sometimes we can actually be comforted by God if we take the time to be still and listen. And sometimes we can actually be challenged by God if we take the time to be still and listen. God speaks. We need to do is be still and listen. Amen. As we gather to pray, we continue to pray for Carson Wallace, Darlene Devine, Grace Whitson, Gail Blank, Bill Wells, Susan Wells, Darlene Shy, Helen Riggs, join Carol's friends Carol and Jen and Baby M. Are there other people you'd like us to remember in prayer? Yes? Alex Elliott's undergoing chemo, yes. Let's pray for him. Yes? Your friend is having some heart issue. Okay, thank you. Phyllis Wood. Thank you. Yes? Your director for Voices of Kentucky is having a major heart attack. In a week. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Gary's had two cousins pass away close together, so we pray for Gary and his family. Some joys I would like to share. Our friends from Trinity United Methodist Church who were here. I would like to thank God for, we had like 12 hours of great weather on Friday. I mean, for the college family. I mean, you got there and there was a breeze, the humidity wasn't too bad, temperature wasn't too bad, and this big yellow thing was in the sky, and the sky was a weird color of blue. So I'm really grateful to that. Yes?
I had another joy after that. Amidst all the stuff that happened last week with the golf scramble, I was very busy. I had this suitcase with my team on Saturday, and I just want to thank them because they supported me, they were there, they helped me, and I was so tired to be there.
Yes. 124 meals, so good job. And
I'm grateful for my team.
Katrin, we're grateful also for the afternoon nap that you need today. Yes?
Kind of concerning and joy at the same time. My niece, she race car driving and she banged up the car, but she's fine. She's sore from the earhead.
Okay. So your niece was in a car accident, she got banged up, but she's fine.
Yes.
Okay. Also, I was thinking of needs, I'm sorry. Yes, okay, Ken.
A joy again this morning. Some of our little tots, about 5 to 8 of our little kids, 10, are meeting up at 5 o'clock this afternoon for dinner and tacos. We're going off to vacation Bible school at Grace School, so we have a good number of little ones.
Okay, so they're going to taco their time for tacos.
Exactly.
Okay. Also, as a concern, let us pray. A young man lost his life on 265 on Friday night in a car accident. So this is the last month. I think 3 different people have died on 265. So let's pray for people's safety and the people who, the families of people who lost loved ones. What I'm going to do right now for our prayer is going to sound counterintuitive. I'm going to have you pray in silence, but we're going to do it to music, a song called Be Still. And part of the reason I'm going to do it is sometimes sitting in silence, it seems like you can sit there for a minute, it seems like about 12 hours, and you get distracted. So with the music, it gives you an opportunity to listen to the music about praying and being still, and also taking the time to be still. So let us take the time to be still.
Be still.
pray together. Our Father, God is present to us when we take the time to be still and listen. Aware of God's presence, let us share our gifts of God with one another.
It's a still small voice, oh, a still small voice, oh, a still small voice, calling to me. It's a still small voice, oh, a still small voice. Can you hear it? It's a still small voice calling to me. Can you hear it calling?
Let us pray. Creator God, giver of all blessings, we give back a small portion of the treasure that you have bestowed upon us. Multiply these gifts to the betterment of your people. May we slow down and be still to hear your voice as we use these offerings to expand your love throughout the world. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
I invite everybody to turn and face each other and commission each other. Let us go forth